I'm going to show you my exact VFAT strategy to make over $250 per day in DeFi passive income off of my underlying cryptocurrency assets. Let's dive right in. The first thing I want to mention is just briefly what VFAT is. It's essentially a DeFi tool. They are not an exchange, they are not a DEX, they're nothing like that, but rather an aggregator, as well as a tool that you can use for research. So there's two different ways that you can use this. Number one, you can actually use this for research to find the different pools and then go deploy directly onto those different pools. Or number two, you can deploy directly through VFAT and use automated rebalancing and automatic compounding and automatic take profit and other tooling similar to like what you can do over on Aperture. Now, with that being said, this is my first time covering VFAT on the channel, and I currently do not have any positions in VFAT, but I'm going to show you my exact strategy to scale up to make over $250 per day from VFAT, and then I'm actually going to deploy into these positions, and in a couple videos update you how those positions are performing. So the first thing that's important is to actually select the protocols that you don't mind deploying into. I'm personally going to select PancakeSwap, Velodrome, as well as Aerodrome. And then when it comes to minimum TVL, remember this is showing in terms of how many thousands, so I'm going to put 100 because I want to look at pools that have at least $100,000 in TVL. And in terms of APR, I'm going to put 50% APR because those are the types of pools that I want to deploy into, the ones that are generating me a high return. Additionally, I'm going to go and I'm going to start to select a couple different networks that I prefer to be on, including the Optimism network, the Arbitrum network, the BNB chain, and of course the Base chain. I'm selecting these ones because Optimism is native to Velodrome. Arbitrum is not native to any of these. Arbitrum is native to Camelot and Uniswap, but those are currently not on VFAT. But PancakeSwap does support Arbitrum. It's important to note that. And then BNB chain is native to PancakeSwap basically. And Base chain is going to be native to Aerodrome. And when I say native, I mean along the lines of Aerodrome is the largest DEX over on Base. It was there first basically. Whereas PancakeSwap, same exact thing goes for BNB chain. Aerodrome, same exact thing goes for Optimism, so on and so forth basically. So now that we have these settings inputted basically, we can start to analyze all of these different pools. And off the bat, you can see that we have a lot of different pools. And if we want to, we can start to filter by assets. Now, the ones that I am going to include in here are going to include ETH in them because I do want to include one that has an ETH to USDC. Now, once I search ETH, the next thing that I'm going to do is sort by APR. Now, it's very important that you sort by APR and not APY because APY factors in if you're compounding all the time basically. But certain pools are going to have different compounding parameters. And keep in mind, some of these I don't necessarily want to compound my position in. And now that I have searched ETH, you can see that we have pools with a lot of ETH in them. The ones that I'm going to want to look for are going to be the ones that have ETH to USD in them because these are the types that I want to deploy into. The first one I'm going to favorite is going to be ETH to USD plus. We could break this down and we could start to see some information. Now, one thing that I also want to highlight is where this money is actually coming from. Where is this 320% APR actually coming from? Well, that's coming from the rewards paid out by the Aerodrome platform. Essentially, how Aerodrome's system works is you provide liquidity into the liquidity pools, and instead of getting the fees that liquidity providers pay, you get Aero tokens. And the goal is that you're going to take those Aero tokens, you're going to lock them up and get VE Aero. VE Aero represents your share of locked Aero basically. And by taking that VE Aero and going over to the vote section and actually voting on incentives, more Aero tokens to go to different liquidity pools, you're not only going to get more incentives, more Aero a lot of the times, and more of other assets, you're also going to get all the fees from that pool over the epic. And typically an epic is lasting about a week, and that's just a DeFi term. Now, another concern is how consistent are these pools actually going to be? That's always an important thing that you need to look at, because while this could be doing 320% APR right now, the last thing that we want to do is deploy our capital into this pool and then end up having to get right into another pool. We'd rather it do it for us and just constantly rebalance whenever it needs to rebalance, so on and so forth. So you can head over to the Dune dashboard where you can track incentives, or you can head over to DeFi Llama, pull up the Aerodrome protocol, and go to the yield section. And once you're on here, you're going to want to find this pool, which is ETH to USD plus. Now, this currently has a TVL of roughly $1.9 million. And if we head over to DeFi Llama, we could just go into the $1.9 million section and easily find this pool. Now, if we did end up wanting to deploy into this position, which I am not deciding if I want to deploy into this position quite yet, I'm just throwing out the idea of deploying into it, we would click on it through VFAT and we can directly deploy in here. So first things first, we would want to have the price in USD, which is USD plus basically. And the tokens that we would be deploying, we can select if we want to deploy in ETH or USD plus or whatever asset it may be. So let's just say I did do ETH. We would put the amount of ETH that I want to deploy into the position, and then we can start to formulate our range. Now, when we're formulating our range, it's a little bit different than when we're using Aperture or when we're going on Uniswap or Aerodrome itself. We are doing this in terms of percentages. So if we were to do a range of, let's just say, minus 9%, 10%, that's going to put our min price at roughly 3,077. Whereas if we were to do a max range of like, let's just say plus 10%, that's going to put our max price at 3,800. Now that is estimating an APR of roughly 98% per year. Keep in mind that is a very solid APR, in my personal opinion, but that could change. And if we have automations turned on, it will rebalance our position to make sure that we do stay in range. Now I'm going to go ahead and close out of that one and start to look for other pools over on VFAT, because this is not the only one that I want to deploy into. I'm also going to check out this ETH to USDC one. I'm personally deployed into a spec to Ethereum position on Uniswap, so I am going to favorite this spec to Ethereum one because it is doing a 355% APR. I'm curious what type of return I can get over on Aerodrome as opposed to over on Uniswap. Now, upon looking at some of these lower TVL pools, I can't really find anything that I like and stuff that I want to include in my portfolio. So I'm going to go back to the top and analyze what assets I want to include in the portfolio. I do see some stuff like Aero to Ethereum that's showing a really high APR. I am going to consider including this in the portfolio, so I am going to favorite it. I'm also going to consider including some Brett in the portfolio because I was previously in an Ethereum Brett strategy on Uniswap. Now keep in mind, if you guys do want to see the update in a couple days when I actually deploy into these VFAT positions and show you how much capital I'm really earning, then make sure to drop a like and subscribe, notifications turned on so you do not miss out on that video. It's always important to stay up to date in DeFi because I could tell you that this is doing a 985% APR, but then after I enter it, it could end up doing something like 500% in actual realized annual return. That's the issue with DeFi. We see all these crazy APRs, but we actually need to dive into them to see what type of returns we can realistically get. So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing, picking my favorite pools and deploying my capital into them. So now that I've favorited a couple different pools, I could go over to this little icon right here that says favorites only, and these are my pools, and I'm now going to start to formulate my portfolio. Typically, I just like to pull up a Google Sheet, outline the position, as well as the network and platform, but in this instance, all of them are on Aerodrome on the base network. I'll include the APR, as well as the capital allocation that I actually end up rowing into this position. I'll include the range, and then of course, I'll include the annual return, which is going to be how much money I'm making every single year, and from the annual return, we can find the daily return, which is how much money I'm making daily. Now keep in mind, we can't just grab the APR right here because these are all different positions with different ranges. When we actually start to adjust that range, it is going to get different. The returns are going to be different. So we need to factor that in. And I'm going to start right here at the top with this ETH to Brett position. So this is currently showing a 579% APR. Now with that being said, Brett is a meme coin. It's currently down 7% today, while the entire crypto market is down 1.6% today. That tells me that these assets are not nearly as correlated as something like ETH Bitcoin, basically. And a range that I'm going to put on ETH Bitcoin is going to be a lot narrower than the range that I'm going to put on ETH Brett. So heading over to DeFi Llama, I am going to go over to the correlation section. And under correlations, I want to pull up ETH as well as Brett. This is going to allow me to analyze the correlation over the past 7 days, the past month, and the past year. I'm mainly paying attention to 7 days and 1 month. And this is around 0.75 to around 0.83. So that tells me I probably want to use a range which is around plus 4%, minus 4% basically. And while it's not going to be a 580% APR, it's going to be more around 385% APR. That is going to keep me in range. And that's showing a total width of roughly 10%. But what I also want to dive into is if we should weight more to one specific asset. So we could do that by looking at these prices. At the lower price, we're going to have 100% of our money in Ethereum. And at the higher price, we're going to have 100% of our money in Brett. By doing a -4 +4 range, we are weighting more towards Brett right now. And the reason why we would want to do that is if we are more bullish on Brett right now. Now, me personally, I'm not super bullish on Brett, nor do I really care about the asset. I care about the yield, which is why I wouldn't deploy a lot of money into this position itself. So I'm going to document my range, which is -3 +4, and that's doing roughly a 426% APR. For capital allocation, I am going to put $3,000. I don't want to deploy a lot of money into this Ethereum Brett position because remember, it is going to be the higher risk position of the bunch basically. The next thing we're going to dive into is the Aero position. We're going to run that exact same strategy. Let's go ahead and pull it up over on DeFi Llama and just see how Aerodrome token is doing when it comes to the actual return. We're going to pull up ETH Aero over on DeFi Llama correlation. Over the past 7 days, you can see there's a 0.3 correlation, and over the past 1 month, it's 0.77. So more correlated over the past month, but less correlated over the past week. We can see exactly why that's happening by pulling up Aero over on CoinGecko. And if we look at the past week, you can see Aero had a slight run up at the beginning of the week, but then since then has seen a pretty big run down. So this is one that I'm not really sure if I do want to deploy into because Aero token is very volatile. If we look at the past 3 months, went from $1.50 all the way down to under 50 cents cents, and then all the way back up to over $1, and now we're sitting at 85 cents. Very volatile asset. I wouldn't want to include more than $1,500 of my capital in this position. And if I were to deploy in this position, I am going to have to do a broader range of, let's just say, -6% plus 6%, basically. Now it's showing an APR roughly 165%, which is not horrible, but do keep in mind that we need to adjust this to weight more towards 50-50, because that's kind of like where I want to be. I'm not really super bullish on Arrow. I personally prefer Ethereum, but at the same exact time, if Arrow is going to outperform, which it does have these instances where it does outperform, like over the past 14 days, it's up 50%, and I am going to want to weight a little bit more to Arrow. So finding that balance is pretty important between +4% and +5%. +4% will weight us more towards like 50-50, +5% will weight us more towards Ethereum, and +3% will weight us more towards Arrow. So I'm personally just going to do +4%, and I am going to adjust my min price to -7 in order to weight me a little bit more towards Arrow. And that's showing a return of roughly 178% APR. Now keep in mind, I'm not sure if I'm going to deploy into this one, so I am going to put this one in a light yellow color because I'm not sure if this is something that I want to include in the portfolio. We're going to move on into Ethereum to spec, and once again, I'm going to throw up the correlations over here. So Ethereum to spec have roughly a 0.71 correlation over the past 7 days and roughly a 0.81 correlation over the past month. Being able to find the correlation and then adjust your range accordingly is an important skill to have because correlations directly affect the size of the range that you can have. If they have a 1 correlation, you can have a super tight range. If they have something like a 0 correlation, you're gonna have to have a super broad range. So being able to analyze correlations and then adjust your range, very important skill. But since it's roughly 0.71 to 0.81, I am gonna do roughly -5 plus 5, basically. Keep it in that tight range area. Now this is gonna weight me more towards Ethereum. So I'm personally going to adjust my range to something like +4, and then we're gonna do -6, basically. And that's going to get me more towards spec. That's shown an APR 405%, which honestly I would be very happy with. So let's just go ahead and put that down on our spreadsheet as well. Now in this position, I would be comfortable allocating roughly $5,000 here. So far we have a total of $9,500 if we were to deploy in all of these, including the Arrow position. And of course, the next thing on the list is going to analyze Ethereum to USD Plus and Ethereum to USDC. The best part is we can run the same range on both of these. We're just including both, or maybe we'll include one depending on the return. The reason why we would want to include both is if the returns are similar, but they fluctuate. We would want to include both so that way if one at one point has a higher return, we can capture that, whereas if the other at one point has a higher return, we can also capture that. Now, something like Ethereum to USDC is not going to have the best correlation because if we take a look at that, you can see over the past month it's 0.13 and over the past 7 days it's 0.77. Keep in mind, USDC does not move in price, so over the past 7 days it has been more stable than it has been over the past month. There's been some pretty big movements over the past month. So stuff that includes Ethereum and USDC, typically I like to start at -5 plus 5. I don't like to go too tight. Now the other thing I could do is in the short term, I could go with like -4 plus 4 or something like that, and then as time goes by, I could start to adjust that range to be a little bit more broad or be a little bit tighter. But we're going to start here and start to adjust. Now if Ethereum is bullish right now, we're going to want to weight more towards Ethereum in the position. But if it's bearish, we're not going to want to weight as much capital. Over the past month, it saw a huge decline and has since retraced that decline. Over the past 3 months, it's starting to pick up and look a little bit bullish. And do keep in mind, we have seen a little bit of a miniature bear market and we're not out of the woods quite yet. On the lower price, we're going to have more towards Ethereum. So I'm going to do a lower min price of -5. I'm going to do a max price of +6 and just start adjusting accordingly. -3 plus 6, that will get me roughly a 170% return. If I want to adjust that just a little bit more, I could get about a 190% return right there with more weighted towards Ethereum. So -3 plus 5 is what I'm going to go for right here. -3 plus 5. And remember, that's the same exact range that we are going to use for Ethereum to USDC. I'm going to assume a $10,000 allocation in these positions. And this is a 189% return on Ethereum to USD Plus. And then over on Ethereum to USDC, we'll do that same exact range, -3 plus 5. And that's roughly a 282% return. Substantially better, guys. So with that being said, I'm actually just going to condense this into the one that's doing 282% because USDC is more blue chip and less riskier than USD Plus. Keep in mind, USD Plus is backed by USDC, but USDC, you'd rather just have direct exposure to it as opposed to indirect exposure. So we'll delete the USD Plus one over here and we'll start to figure out the annualized returns by just multiplying APR by capital allocation. That's going to look something like this. And when we add all of these numbers together, that's $92,000 off of $30,000 of capital. Now from there, it's important to break these numbers down into a daily return just like that. And that daily return is coming out to roughly $252, which is right above my metric of over $250 per day. And I am pretty happy with that. The next order of business is to adjust, right? We have $29,500 of capital allocated. Remember, we're not entirely comfortable with Arrow. So me personally, I would rather wait about $4,000 $1,000 over here to ETH RET, and just wait another $1,000 over here to ETH SPEC, and then kind of delete out that arrow position, and that gets me roughly $268 per day, which is way above my metric, and I am very, very happy with that. So off of this $30,000, we're making $97,000 annually, which is a total of 325% APR. That is a very, very good number to be getting off of our position, especially with the majority of our allocation weighted towards ETH USDC. About 2/3 of the portfolio is there. The other 1/3 of the portfolio is in riskier assets. Now, do keep in mind, with these riskier assets, you could end up locking up too much in permanent loss, and since these ranges are automatically rebalancing, we could end up rebalancing too often, which is usually going to be the death of your position, because along with rebalancing, you have gas fees, and you also have slippage, and of course trading fees for executing trades, because you are trading through different liquidity pools. That's 3 different types of fees there that you have to look out for and factor into your analysis. So what I will be doing is I will be entering into a couple of these different positions. I won't be deploying the full 30,000 off the bat, but rather I will be scaling in. I'll test this out with some capital and then start to scale in with more and more capital as time goes by. And if you guys want to stay updated with that, once again, I am going to be dropping an update video on my channel, so make sure to drop a like and subscribe, notifications turned on. And in the next video, we are going to be diving into Aerodrome and what type of performance you could get over there. I'll see you guys later, and peace out.